to the Building PA podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, John O'Brien from the Keystone Contractors Association, coming to you from what looks like a good sunny day here in central Pennsylvania. Joined as always by fellow co-host on the left side of the state, good old Pittsburgh, good old best friend of the show here, awesome leader of the show here, Chris Martin. How we doing today, sir?
Hey, John. We need to talk more often because you always make me feel so good when we talk. Like, you pump me up and I just feel like I can go and conquer the world. So thank you for that every single time. I love it.
I felt like I could do better, but I'm coming off a little sickness. Normally I really hype you up, but this time it's just kind of.
I'll take what I can get.
All right.
And I know you're getting better. You're on the mend, so I like it. But welcome everybody to the Building PA podcast. As John said, we are talking about a bunch of stuff in construction. I'm in Pittsburgh and I am with Atlas Marketing, and you can check us out at atlasstories.com. And today we actually have some very good friends of mine that don't tell anyone, John.
Mm-hmm.
These guys aren't in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's good. We're branching out.
So we're branching
that's
out.
Yeah.
We got our friends all the way from Dallas and Houston.
Nice.
And calling in from Dallas, we have Mackenzie Carolan, who is the VP of Business Development for Linbeck, and a good friend of mine as well, Todd Zdunkewicz, who is a senior project manager with Linbeck. And I'm so proud. I've known Todd for about 5 years, and I finally learned how to say his last name. So when you see it,
Mike drop in the show right there. Just
exactly
perfectly. There you go.
Well, welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to be
We're super
here.
excited to be here.
You bet. How's life in Texas? What's going on down there?
It's gloomy. It's gloomy, rainy, and gross today in Dallas. So, not wonderful.
Okay. We're stealing the sun from
Pittsburgh.
It's a little muggy over here, but not too bad. But Houston's Houston. It doesn't have near the weather conditions as Dallas have, which have all the seasons. We just have two, cold and hot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking to two guys from Pennsylvania that it's just, you deal with it,
Yeah.
So, and I know you guys do too. So.
But, it could be snowing in March, or you never know who anything appears.
It's great. That's why we love it, But on the Building PA podcast today, we are talking about something that I know John and I've talked about a lot, and a lot of our clients talk about it as well, and trying to implement it, which is that stellar doer model of business development, and it is a hot topic in construction. So, you guys how do you want to conquer this? Mac, why don't you lead us? Why don't you take us through this? What is the seller doer model? And then Todd, I'll ask you to talk about Linbeck as a whole, so everybody in Pennsylvania knows about Linbeck. How's that?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. So I think you have to take it down to a really simple, basic level and define what is the definition of seller doer. And I think it's the same across just about every construction company. You're building relationships, you're building business, and you're trying to build buildings, your projects. If people can't get on the same page of what a seller doer is, and you don't agree with that, then it's going to cause issues and more challenges within the organization. So the whole company has to understand this fundamental principle that business development is about building people, relationships, and projects.
I like that.
Simple.
Yeah.
We like that. We like to keep it simple. That is good. Todd, tell all these Northerners up here what's Linbeck, and what do you guys do?
So actually, we are celebrating our 85th anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we are currently a third generation company, family company that is, and started off in Houston and eventually grew into the DFW area, and more recently have grown this business into Central Texas. And our focus, I'd say, is anywhere or mostly healthcare and education, but also on the cultural side of things with museum and performance halls. So we tend to really go after or build those high profile projects, but also make sure that part of our service is building for communities. So that's certainly a high focus of ours.
Nice.
Cool.
So when I think of seller doer model, and this is just my vision here, I think of like the small to like mid-sized general contractor, the owner, that has a hat and everything. They handle payroll, they overlook estimates, they overlook business development, they overlook everything, and they kind of touch everything. That's what I think of when Chris said, "Oh, we're going to do an episode on seller doer." I thought something like that, but that's not really the Linbeck model. That's not really the Linbeck type of company. That's not.
So I would say that Linbeck is a mid-sized general contractor. Having come from working for Hensel Phelps, Gilbane, Tudor Perini in the past, I think Linbeck does about $500 million a year in revenue. So we're a large mid-sized GC. But even companies, large GCs that do $5 billion a year have seller doer models. I've been working in the seller doer model since 2010. And so it's been implemented across all different kinds of companies. The one you named is true also. It works with small firms, and it can also work with very large firms. So it really depends. I think it can be implemented across all sizes of companies. And all seller doer is you're the builder and you can build the project, but you can also get the work and build the relationship and trust with the client to bring in the project. That's essentially what being a good seller doer is you do a good enough job to build trust with a client or even a new client and guide them to help win yourself a project.
That goes back to what you said earlier, keeping it simple. Like that is a really simple definition. I think everybody get their head around it. But so it's interesting that we have a senior PM, and then we have the vice president of business development talking to us today. And Mackenzie, just on that definition that you just gave, it kind of seems like might be a little bit of a challenge in the business development side. Allowing someone like Todd, who's very, very open and can talk and do those things. But how does that, is that a force that kind of pushes against each other?
So I will say that the seller doer model is a mindset adjustment when it's introduced to a new organization. It is basically saying, hey guys, I know you're so focused on the job. Every day you wake up and the first thing you think about is, what do I need to do on my job site? What do I need to do to get this project finished and done on time and on budget? I wake up every morning saying, how are we going to hit our sales goal this year? How are we going to win this project? What are we going to do to differentiate ourselves? And so working with the job site teams, you have to recognize as a salesperson that they don't wake up thinking and feeling the same way you do about projects, about sales, and selling projects. So to that, you have to really train your people. And I try to do at least, 3 to 4, a training a quarter is what I aim for. It usually ends up being about 3 a year. Close enough. But I try to do quarterly trainings, because if you train your people and explain to them the model and what success looks like, it starts transitioning their mindset to wake up and say, I need to build this project, but I should also talk to my owner about what he has coming up next. Because the easiest way to win work is to win more work with a current client, right? And so that's really what we focus on.
Good.
I'm glad you mentioned
Mackenzie. And so once Mackenzie helps develop our people and get them comfortable enough to be able to take that next step, it doesn't just drop off then. So we, of course, correspond with Mackenzie, making sure we're still abiding by our guidelines and our processes. We can't all be wandering off like, cats. We have to be unified in our message, right? So we just don't operate in our silo. We always get feedback. We're bouncing things off each other. Hey, is this a good choice? Do you know this person? So it's constant exchange.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. And as far as training, is it up and down the whole company from executive down to entry level, just so everyone's on the same page? And
Yep. So we do like an annual sales meeting every year. And in that annual sales meeting, any people who've started with Linbeck over the past couple of years get invited to the training, whether you're an engineer or an intern, up to our client executives and even our CEO attends every year. And so this is a way to get engagement from the top to the bottom and bottom to the top, so that the culture can start being embraced. Because for the new people, and this is what I always tell our engineers and assistant project managers, you guys are building relationships with other people that are in similar roles. So if you're a brand new engineer and you're making friends with a brand new, architect on a job site, you guys are going to grow in your careers together. And if you build a relationship, in 10 years, you're going to be the leaders of your organizations. And it's through building trust and relationships AKA the seller doer model that you bring in this work.
So the seller doer model, as it relates to your business and your company, is more of a cultural component than it is really a business development or project management component. Am I hearing you right?
Yeah, it's a cultural, yeah, it's our culture.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. And Todd, let me ask you this: from your perspective as a project manager, and I know some of the projects we've talked about this on some of the projects that you've worked on. That they're not just building a shed in the backyard. They're big, a lot of healthcare stuff. So my question to you is, how do you manage that aspect of managing a project yet cultivating a relationship to look for the next, what's next? How do you do that?
Sure. That is a good question. I think that response also evolves over time. Myself, I've tried to find a way to incorporate what I do on a day-to-day basis, since my priority is operations. It's delivering that project the way that owner needs it and sees it, or else the selling aspect disappears. It seems to not exist, or else, you're not going to get the next job with that client. But what I try to do is I try to incorporate basically our goals, our conversations around building trust. If I can build trust with a client, they are more willing to be open and to have just general conversations, because that's really how this stuff creates more business or better relationships. And it's always not about more business. It's more so creating that relationship and trust that could equate to more business. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and just to explain a little bit about Linbeck, is we do a lot of CM at risk work, a lot of design build, a lot of integrated project delivery. We don't hard bid projects. So our business model that we follow is extremely relationship driven. And that was my point to what Todd's speaking.
Right. Exactly. And the biggest thing, and I kind of talked about this before we got on this podcast, is really you want your people to want to work with the client, to want to help the client. And that goes beyond just building a project. It goes to, if they need help at their garden, if they need help creating a presentation so that they get the spotlight, it just is so much further than what we think of as just earning more work. It's truly having your people want to help others. And if you can develop that type of understanding across your business, that seller doer mentality is going to come natural, and is going to be portrayed that way too to your clients, instead of what sometimes people think of as sales is like sell. No, it's generally building a relationship, making those people want to spend every day with you, because at the end of the day, we have our families, we have our hobbies. So not everybody's thinking about what do I want to do outside of work other than those things. And you want to kind of change that, right?
Nice, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So the Todds of the company, the PMs, all the way down to the interns, they turn the Mac for this annual training, this annual education culture. Oh, I'm sorry, what?
No, there's an annual training, and then I do like 3 others throughout the year in different regions, locations. I go to large job sites and I'll do the trainings a few times a year. trying to emphasize whether it's a different skill or a presentation skills training or basics of business development or seller doer overview, trying to make sure you keep educating your people, because there's always more to learn and there's always a way to stay in front of your folks. And if you stay in front of them, they're eventually going to kind of pick it up and start hopefully utilizing the skills that they've been taught.
But I'm glad you said that about the job sites. I was going to ask about that. Like, they turn to you for education, but then do you turn to the job site to get the hands-on, the operation knowledge? And so it's give and take, you guys educate each other for this seller doer model.
So I go visit at least one job site a month and also do a training. And that's something that I've started doing about 2 years ago when COVID was in full swing and I wasn't able to really get to see our people a whole lot. And we've kept that up. And I think it's a great way also for me to interact with our people and see how they're doing, stay in touch with our folks, our teams. So, yeah.
Nice.
So if there is somebody out there that's listening to this and is going, you know what, I really, really like this approach. I want to, what are some challenges that you have seen that would be, almost in the implementation phase of, this seller doer approach? What are some of those that you could share with our listeners?
I think that in the seller doer approach, there are folks that are introverted. They want to go to work. They are true builders, right? And this is a challenge I've experienced at Linbeck and everywhere else I've worked. You have folks that are not interested in building relationships. They want to do their job, go home. They don't want to do anything outside of building their project. And you have to rank your people. As a sales professional, if you're in business development and you're trying to work with someone who's just not engaged, eventually you have to just cut the losses and say, okay, here's our group of A's who are excellent seller doers. They understand how to sell and they're excellent builders. Here's our B's where they're good builders. They have a little bit of skill with regard to sales and being able to build relationships with clients. And then we have our folks that show up and we've tried to get them to engage for 3 years. They're not engaging. I don't even try to focus on those. I focus on the B's, those folks that have room for improvement. But I would say that's a huge challenge when you have a lot of folks who don't feel the need to bring in work, because if we don't have any sales, we don't attain a profit, we don't get margin, and eventually we're going to go out of business and we won't have a company. So everybody sells in some form or fashion, right? It might not be going and knocking on a client's door and asking cold call for a meeting, but whether it's talking to the architect that you're building a relationship with, or the engineer on site, or the subcontractor who you've been talking to for 6 months, that's how that's how you start doing seller doer.
Right. Yeah. And to kind of add on to that, a seller doer could be, operating at a grade C level on one job, because maybe personalities, the job and the client aren't totally aligned. They don't see eye to eye, or maybe those personalities just don't mix well. But you never know, on the next project, you could find a client that's, purely operations based, technical. And so they want to talk to somebody who's just as technical, and you have that superintendent who's typically not a seller doer. Well, they may love each other. So we also, I should say, boomerang back and check up on those people, making sure that there's room for improvement, or they're also getting the opportunity to try it again, if that makes sense.
Good.
How do new entries, embrace this culture? The new hires and interns, and I'm just guessing, I would think that something they would like they're part of the team and helping out. And
I will say that some love it right away. Some are so overwhelmed that I have to do some breakout sessions and spend one-on-one time with them, because it is something that if you've grown up and you're an engineer and you've never really learned the soft skills side of business, it's overwhelming, especially kids coming out of college today. And so you have all different types. Some take quickly, some need a little bit more coaching. I actually have a meeting tomorrow with one of our interns in estimating, and he and I are sitting down to review the seller doer presentation that I gave earlier this month, and he's going to give me feedback on terms he didn't quite know, things to create a cheat sheet so that I could hand that out to the new hires when they are brought on board, so they can kind of understand some of the lingo. Like, not everyone knows RFP, RFQ, CMAR, IPD, stuff like that.
Interesting.
And that's good that you're seeing that and using that as a way to build off of that. So let me ask you this question then too, for both of you, Mackenzie and Todd. What do you feel are the tools that are necessary for success in this business model?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's.
I stumped them, John. I stumped them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got us. I think it's critical to one, make sure that this is aligned with your company's guiding principles, values, mission, because that's really the foundation of this all. Part of our mission is we're a company of owners. So your mentality should be like you own this company as well, and treat everything you do in that aspect. So that kind of lays the foundation and keeps you on the right track. But you also have to give your people enough leash to be able to form their own way of being themselves and adapting to that seller doer model. And when somebody maybe doesn't do it the way that you expected, or maybe they failed the first pass, you gotta come back around and continue to coach them, give them opportunity, instead of there being not going to happen again. You got to keep on going. You got to give it a second try, because if we always, stopped after our first mistake, well, we wouldn't be getting anywhere. And also having good leaders that help develop those people. Mackenzie can't do it all. It would be great if she could, but it's just not practical. So we've got to have good leaders who can help mentor others, and ultimately keep us all aligned. So I'd say those are crucial. It's just the responsibility aspect, giving a little leash, letting others learn how it feels natural to them, because everybody has their own way.
I agree with what you said, Todd. I think for me, it's the top three things are giving them the resources and the tools to be successful, right? So that's access to me, access to senior PMs like Todd, who are good seller doers, who can guide them, and then making sure that I provide time when I can to meet with them. And also, developing documents, processes, tools to help them set them up for success. Also giving them time, make sure that they're not so consumed on a job site. If we're in a push phase on a project and they need to be on the site 12 hours a day or whatever it is, they're not going to have the availability, time, or energy mentally to handle the sales side of seller doer. So it's giving them the time. And then also, finally, the third thing I would say is giving them the opportunity. You have to give them an opportunity. So getting those young folks or newer people involved on a proposal or RFQ presentation, and starting to loop them in slowly so they can start seeing the sales side of a seller doer is really helpful, because then they start learning slowly along the way what it's like and how to participate.
I'm sold. You guys give great advice. Yeah. You guys give great advice. I love it. Yeah. We're in. We're gonna. You know what, John? Let's go down. We're gonna go to Dallas. We're gonna sit through one of Mackenzie's training. We'll do an episode from there. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
I have a 2-day training coming up in June.
Okay.
We can come down. We'll make that work. Thank you.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, I have to say, Todd, Mackenzie, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a lot of great information. I don't like to put words in John's mouth, even though a lot of the times I step over him. But I can say I think this was a really great topic, and one that I think can help a lot of people in the industry. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you guys inviting us, and yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you.